Hello again and welcome to another Mordy and Glory Warhammer 40k video. In today's episode, I want to talk about the latest balanced data slate and Minotaur field manual which have just been released by Games Workshop and what these latest changes to the game mean to the Imperial Guard. Now there has been some chit and dare I say chat amongst the Guard community about all of this, and a lot of people are feeling pretty negative about the changes. So we're going to take a look at them step by step. We're going to analyze each one and we're going to see if there are any buffs to the Guard in here, any nerfs to the Guard in here, and overall how the Guard made out. And so without further ado, let's not mess around any further. Let's fix bayonets and drive right into today's episode.
Attention, Guardsmen! The Commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
So let us begin with some good news and take a look at the Minotaur field manual. And once again, the Guard has received some pretty significant points cuts. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. However, as you will see later on when we get to the balanced data slate, a lot of these points cuts are coming with a catch, a little bit of a caveat if you will. First unit to receive points cuts is Armored Sentinels. This was long overdue. They went up 10 points at the beginning of 10th edition and it really kind of killed the usefulness of the unit. They have not completely reversed that though. Armored Sentinels have come down by 5 points, making it 65 points per walker, and for a full squad of 3 costing you 195 points. This does make them a more attractive option, but they are still more expensive than nearly every Lehman Russ variant. Armored Sentinels have benefited from some of the changes in the balanced data slate though, so overall I think this unit getting a points cut and getting some significant buffs by the data slate, I think this unit has come out and done well. There have also been sweeping changes and decreases to the Guard Artillery Corps. The Basilisk is down to 140 points now, Death Strike down to 145, it's still useless but at least it's useless cheaper. And then you've got Field Ordnance Batteries, which are a very attractive 110 points. I think we're going to see quite a few people switch over to the Field Ordnance Batteries. They are eminently cheaper and are not as impacted by the indirect fire rule changes that we'll be looking at later on. Everyone's favourite Rocket Artillery also came down to 175 points. Now these decreases are welcome, but looking ahead a little bit, artillery in general has been quite heavily nerfed. You can only hit with indirect fire weapons on a 4+ now. So you can no longer get your Guard artillery up to hitting on a 2, rerolling 1s. There are some people trying to argue that the Scout Sentinels ability to use daring recon will counter this, but frankly I don't see it. The change to indirect fire mean that Guard artillery is pretty much always just going to be hitting on a 4, whether it's infantry based artillery that you're going to give an order to, or it's just a Basilisk or a Manticore that's going to stay still and use its heavy rule to just hit on its native blitz skill of 4+. Do I think artillery is dead? Absolutely not. You're still going to need it to season your army. You're still going to have those situations when there's a small enemy unit hiding behind line of sight on an objective, and the only way that you can get to that unit is with your artillery. I think now what we're going to see is a real shift, and most Guard players had already moved away, but there were a few holdouts. But I think we're going to see pretty much the death of artillery spam. But I think for hybrid Guard armies and a lot of other Guard armies, just popping a couple of artillery pieces in there to do a bit of support fire to target those out of line of sight units, that's what we're going to see. But the days of 3 Basilisks and 3 Manticores supported by loads of Sentinels, I don't think that's the case anymore. You'll see a couple, but you won't see spam. Next up, we have seen Kazakin come down to 110 points, and that feels about right. I think 100 points probably was a little cheap, and I think 120 points was too expensive. I think 110 points kind of feels like the Goldilocks zone. So Kazakin are back on the menu, and I expect to see people running them again. But out of all of the points decreases, there is one last one, which really gets my dick hard. Oh my days. The Rogel Dawn Battle Tank just came down to 240 points. Oh mama. Oh baby. Ay papi. I think we're going to see triple Rogel Dawn hit the tables. And I think that we're going to see double Rogel Dawn be a very, very common sight. In this scary, crazy world of Tau Monka and other armies with incredible lethality that are appearing, having a tank that can just take a punch to the nose, turn around, and just headbutt the opponent back is very, very important. I recently played a game where Rogel Dawns were fighting alongside Leman Russes, and my Russes were popping left, right, and centre. Chimeras were popping, Hellhounds were popping, everything was popping in the face of firepower. But the one unit that took it all and took it right to the end of the game was the Rogel Dawns. So I am a big fan of this change. I think it is GW. They're definitely pushing us in a certain direction. GW is like, the age of artillery is over. The age of the tank has begun. And I think a lot of Guard players are going to be quite happy with it. There are lots of different Guard players in our community. We've got Infantry Guard players, we've got Artillery Guard players, we've got Hybrid Guard players. But if I was to make a guess, if I was a betting man, I would put a wager on the most common kind of Guard player. The number one reason why most people get into this faction is the big ass tonks. That's what it is. Guard players like tanks, and Treadheads are probably the biggest sub community within our community. And between all of the points changes to the Leman Russes last time, and now Rogel Dawns getting decreases as well, Tank Guard, Met Guard is eating good tonight. So bringing all of this together, the points changes from last time combined with the points changes this time have led to some really big cuts for the Guard. Yes, there is a dark cloud hanging over the artillery changes, absolutely. But Armored Sentinels coming down, Kazakin coming back down, Scions coming down, Rogel Dawns coming down, all the Leman Russes coming down, Hellhounds coming down. There's probably some other point changes that I've missed outside of the artillery as well. There's a lot of save points there. I think a lot of Guard players are going to find an extra 50 or 100 points in their armies easily. I also think that if the last balanced data slate for a lot of players, the last point change for a lot of players, meant that their list came down a little bit or stayed about the same. I had a lot of Hybrid Guard players who were like, well, my artillery went up, my tanks came down, so I basically made out the same. I had some people last time tell me their lists have come down significantly. Last time it was more of a slightly down. Now I think we're looking at everyone coming out with extra points. You may have lost some capability, but you are getting more stuff in your armies. But that covers the Munitorum Field Manual. Let's go over to the balanced data slate. And unfortunately, at the start of this document, there were some really hard pills for Guard to swallow. Essentially, if you have an ability that decreases the cost of a named stratagem to 0 CP, that still works. But if you don't have a named stratagem, then rather than doing a battle tactic stratagem for free, now you can just reduce the cost of any stratagem by 1 command point. So to put this into context with the Guard, the Deathcore Marshal's ability allows him to do insane bravery for 0 CP. Because that is a named stratagem, that still works exactly as it did before. No changes there. But Ursula Creed no longer gives you a free battle tactic stratagem, so no more free fields of fire. Rather, you can use any stratagem for 1 less CP. So you can make fields of fire 1 CP, but you can't make it free. This does open up some other interesting possibilities. You can get a free grenade stratagem, for example. Now, this on its own is a pretty big nerf to Ursula Creed, but it gets compounded even further when we look at the next part of the balanced data slate, stratagems that can be used more than once per phase/turn. Essentially how this has changed is unless it's a named stratagem, you can't do the same stratagem twice. So again, using the Deathcore Marshal as an example, he has a named stratagem and it specifically says in that ability that you can use this stratagem, Insane Bravery, even if you've already used it that turn. So again, no changes for the Deathcore Marshal. But Creed doesn't name a specific stratagem. So as a result, you cannot do Fields of Fire twice. You can either spend 2 CP to do Fields of Fire normally, or you can spend 1 CP and get Creed to use her ability, but you cannot do both. So no more double stacking Fields of Fire in one turn. I have to say, this feels a little heavy-handed, and I get the impression that maybe there were other factions that were abusing these free stratagems and X stratagems more than the Guard, and Ursula Creed has just kind of been caught in the crossfire with this whole thing, although I may be wrong about that. Now, I have seen a lot of Guard players say that Ursula Creed is now dead on arrival, there's no point in putting on your list whatsoever. I have to say I actually disagree with that. Yes, this is a big blow, but fundamentally, no matter how you slice it, Fields of Fire is one of, if not our best stratagem. And getting it for free was amazing. And getting it for free and being able to do it twice in one turn was just mind-bogglingly good. Getting it for 1 CP is decent. Getting a discount on our best stratagem is still a good thing. It's not as good as it once was, but I still think putting Creed in a list with a infantry squad with the mortar is going to be the staple for a lot of Guard players. I wish I could tell you that was the worst news in the balanced data slate. I wish I could tell you that Creed was the only casualty here, but I can't do that. Because there's one more change here that's going to affect the Guard, in the core rule changes, I mean. And that is stratagems that add new units to your army, aka reinforcements. They've added a restriction. You can only use the stratagem once per battle. No, not like this, GW. Okay, in all honesty, this is a mistake. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Guard player. I'm not saying that because I'm biased. Reinforcements did need reining in. It was a very strong stratagem, and personally, I abused the shit out of it. But this is a huge overcorrection. And it's also really like immersion breaking. So it's a huge overcorrection because only being able to do it once per game, essentially, I don't want to say it kills Infantry Guard, but Pure Infantry Guard was up there as, if you could get the models together, it was a high investment in time and money, but and in practice, but if you could get the models together, you would have a really, really potent and fun and cinematic way of running your Guard. Send wave after wave of my own men into them until they reach their kill limit. You could full on zap Brannigan, and everyone loved that. Now that you can't do it more than once, look, 40k is a hyper lethal game. Despite everything that GW has done over with 10th edition, trying to rein things in, it's a hyper lethal game. I have run pure infantry armies with 240 infantry, and I have lost 240 infantry. And the only reason that I was able to stay in that game, and I didn't win a lot of these games, but the only reason I was able to stay in this game, was able to keep plugging on, get a few more points, maybe claw a draw, maybe snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, was because I still had 100 guys left over because I'd used reinforcements 5 times over the game. It was an incredible stratagem. It was very, very good. And I think now I just don't think Infantry Guard has staying power. I don't think you can fit enough in. Definitely seems like GW is pushing us towards tanks. Definitely. Now, I think the reason this change has been made is because of Pariah Nexus. I think that Games Workshop has seen that reinforcements could be real janky with Pariah Nexus, and they've wanted, and Unending Swarms and other ones like that. I think they've wanted to nip that in the bud. I see this as a preemptive nerf. Now, firstly, I'm really not a fan of preemptive nerfs. Not at all. It shows a significant attitude change from Games Workshop. Feels like they are nerfing something before you know for sure it's fucked. It's not okay. There's always been this sort of unwritten rule, this sort of agreement with the balance team that they'll release stuff and then they'll let it ride for maybe sort of 2 or 3 months, and then they'll use the balance data slate to change stuff because they've had enough time to let the data build up then. It's not just like a reaction. It's not just people getting upset by things on paper. This now seems like, oh no, we think reinforcements are going to be a problem. We're just going to preemptively nerf it. I don't like it. There's a lot of that in here. I'm sort of going out the scope of guard here, but there's a lot of armies that seem to have received quite a lot of preemptive nerfs, like point shade and stuff like that. And again, I think what we've seen in the past where GW has made changes and then let them ride for a little bit has been the right way of doing things. But hey, maybe I'm looking at this through the lens of the guard. Maybe if I was to change this ability to add new units to the army, the way I would do it is I would allow it to be done every single turn, but I'd limit it to once per turn, not once per phase. And what I'd also do is I'd Necron power grid it. I would shadow in the war pit. You can only bring your reinforcements back you can always bring your reinforcements back in your deployment zone. If you control the majority of the objectives in the middle of the board, you can bring them back in no man's land. And if you control your opponent's objective, you can bring them back in your opponent's deployment zone. That really solves the whole reinforcement thing, because it also kind of represents, like, you can imagine the flavor text of reinforcements. As the guard pushes forward, if they see successes, Imperial commanders are more willing to feed more meat into the grind to exploit openings that have formed on the battlefield. The Tyranids, as they take more ground, as they feed more biomass, they enter a feeding frenzy, and more bugs are instinctively drawn towards the fight. It just feels like it makes a lot more sense. It nerfs in a lot of it nerfs in deep striking scions, like just scions deep, coming down, dying, going back to reinforcements, because you can only bring new units back into the power grid, for lack of a better term. Overall, I think the change to reinforcements is anti-stratagems that add units to your army. I don't like it. I think it's overly heavy-handed. I think it really punishes particular playstyles. I think that hybrid guard is going to suffer from this. I think that infantry guard is going to suffer hugely from it. I think it's another push for GW pushing us towards tanks, which is fine, but there are more than mech guard players, there are more than armored guard players in our community, and I also think this feels a little short-sighted. It feels like a change made for Pariah Nexus. Well, what's going to happen in a year's time when Pariah Nexus goes away? Is this restriction going to go away? Often when Games Workshop makes a change, they don't undo it. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they sort of throw things in and then forget about them. And that's what I think is going to happen. If I was a betting man, I suspect that this restriction is going to be here for the rest of the edition. That just about covers the changes to the core rules in the Balanced Data Slate, but we've had some guard changes as well. Specifically, the Combined Regiment Detachment, the Born Soldiers rule, has had a big overhaul. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I think that this change is good. I think it's a buff overall. I know a lot of guard players don't see it that way right now, but honestly, after playing a game with the new Born Soldiers, I think it is a big buff overall. Previously, how it worked is you had to stay still, and if you did, you got lethal hits. Movement wins games. Staying still was an absolute trap, and the vast majority of the time, I didn't have a detachment rule. I didn't. In all the games that I played, I would be running my hybrid guard, and I'd have maybe like 10 to 15% of my army in artillery, and that was benefiting from Born Soldiers, but none of the other units in my army were. And there was like the occasional time when I got to stay still and shoot it. It was like, ooh, I'm now this one game, this one turn in this one tournament, in this one tournament, I'm getting to use Born Soldiers. I managed to stay still this turn. It just never came up. It was a non-ability. How they've changed it now is essentially regiment units from your army get lethal hits when shooting not monsters and vehicles, And squadron units from your army get lethal hits when they are shooting monsters and vehicles. So infantry shooting infantry gets lethal hits, and vehicles shooting vehicles and monsters get lethal hits. The big problem that a lot of people have with this rule is you have to be visible now, so you can't use indirect fire weapons to get lethal hits. Yeah, that's why the points came down before. Yes, it is a big nerf to guard artillery. Guard artillery spam is, like I said, basically dead. But this is going to affect so many more units. This is going to come up every single turn for the majority of your army. And if you build into this, you're going to have a very good time. And the age of the Basilisk might be over, but the age of the Sentinel, those Sentinels which just got some points decreases, has begun. Because Sentinels have both the regiment and squadron keyword. So Sentinels get lethal hits every time, all of the time. Another unit that's really going to benefit from this is the Humble Chimera. Some people are a bit bent out of shape because they wanted the old lethal hits that let lasguns like lethal against Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights. But you can't do that with infantry. But apparently the Chimera lasguns have got some sort of special targeting or special power matrix, because the lasguns on a Chimera absolutely can get lethal hits against a Knight. In fact, a Chimera with 12 lasgun shots, 6 heavy bolter shots, and 6 heavy stubber shots will be doing 4 lethal hits every turn against vehicles. This makes Chimeras not only just naturally good at killing infantry because of just all that volume of fire, but now really good at stacking on lethals against enemy vehicles as well. And looking towards the bigger tanks of the Guard, what about the Leman Russ battle tank, the El Clasico? Full rerolls to hit on an objective, that's full opportunities to get more lethal hits against targets that traditionally the old battle cannon has kind of struggled against. Oh, that strength 10 doesn't quite cut it against vehicles. It bloody does now because it's got lethal hits and I am slapping you in the face with a big damage 3 battle cannon. And how about those Rogel Dawns? That just came down 20 points. Oh yeah, I'll take an oppressor cannon with D6 plus 3 shots, plus an auto cannon for an average of 9 shots between those two weapons. Then I'm going to put on 3 heavy stubbers for 18 more shots. Then I'm going to have a pulverizer cannon, or you go for the cascaded Gatling cannon if you wanted to, and I'm going to have heavy bolts on top of that. So much potential for lethal hits. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but more than you're looking at this in an idealized way. You're thinking that you're always going to be getting lethal hits because your vehicles are always going to be shooting vehicles. What about when your vehicles shoot infantry? Here's the thing. We are in a vehicle meta. We are in a monster meta. And even with this balance change, some people are calling it 10.5. I don't see that change. Even Pariah Nexus, I don't see that change. Vehicles are being pushed by GW. Horde armies like Green Tide got nerfed, and a lot of other Horde armies as well, with the changes to the reinforcements. I think battle line is going to be more important, but I think we're entering an age of mechanized infantry. I've been saying that since the beginning of 10, that it's not just for Guard, but I think for a lot of factions as well. That's where I think we're going. So we're going to be encountering a lot of monsters still. We're going to be encountering a lot of vehicles still. We're going to be encountering a lot of transport still. These lethal hits are going to be cropping up a lot. But even if you do come across a horde, even if you do shoot some infantry, tanks have no issue killing infantry. Chimeras have volume of fire to hose down all sorts of infantry. They've got damage to on those heavy bolters. They've got people that are shooting out the back as well. Don't forget, the people shooting out of the back benefit from this ability as well. Your plasma gun, your melter gun shooting out the back of this Chimera, it gets lethal hits when shooting enemy vehicles. That's great. Your Leman Russes. I don't know how many times I've fired a Leman Russ at an enemy unit on an objective, an enemy infantry unit, and just cleared them off with the full rerolls. I didn't need lethal hits. Once I got the hits through, the strength 10 was basically wounding everything on 2s anyway. Everything up to and including Terminators. So the super heavy infantry where I wasn't doing that, like Custodes. And well, Custodes, they've had a few buffs from this, but I don't think they're going to be resurging anytime soon. I could be wrong. I could have to eat my words. But my point is that tanks getting better at killing tanks is great for the Guard, because tanks are already fine at killing infantry. Would it have been nice to get the old 9th edition lethal hits back where everyone just got it all the time? Sure, of course it would. But GW doesn't want us lads gunning knights down. And so this is the compromise that we get. Your vehicles are going to be smacking the crap out of enemy vehicles. And we're in a vehicle meta. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a good, positive change. Movement wins games, vehicles beat vehicles, and hey, sometimes your infantry is going to get to hose down some enemy infantry. And sentinels are going to be killing every motherfucker in the room. However, whilst I think this overall is going to be a damage improvement for the guard, and it's going to finally put to bed all of the arguments around artillery guard being broken, I do have a couple of significant issues with it. Firstly, I'm annoyed that it's based upon regiment and squadron, and it's not based upon non-vehicular monsters shooting non-vehicular monsters and vehicles shooting vehicles and monsters. Because there's a lot of units in the guard which don't have the regiment keyword or the squadron keyword for whatever reason. I think someone worked out 45 out of 89 of our datasheets don't benefit from the combined arms detachment rule. Can't benefit from it. It doesn't really make sense that a lemurous battle tank gets the lethal hits, but a tank commander doesn't. Because tank commanders don't have the squadron keyword. Was the tank commander not a born soldier? Did he buy his commission? Did every guard officer now buy their commission? That doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right that the Baneblade, the mightiest vehicle in the guard arsenal, doesn't benefit from this. Why? Why are the crews of the Baneblade not getting this? It also feels kind of messed up when you have infantry equipped with anti-tank weapons not really getting the benefit against tanks. Someone said to me in the live stream last night, oh, does this make field ordnance batteries with las cannons more attractive? And I was thinking, no. Because even though that field ordnance battery has been given heavy las cannons and it's clearly a dedicated anti-tank unit, and its whole thing will be its focus on killing tanks, it gets lethals against infantry. That doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel like the anti-tank unit is focused on anti-tank stuff. Likewise, what about infantry squads or heavy weapon teams equipped with regular las cannons? It doesn't feel right. What about melter guns? Melter guns are meant to bust tanks open, but they don't benefit from this. A melter gun on a Rogel Dawn benefits from it, but a melter gun on an infantryman doesn't? What? A las gun on a Chimera benefits for, and then you've got the ways where it doesn't make sense at all, where you've got like the other way around, where you've got anti-infantry stuff which now is better at killing vehicles. Like the las guns on the Chimeras are good at killing vehicles, but not the las guns on the infantry. Again, it's a rule that makes sense from a balance point of view. Like balance wise, I get it, but from an immersion point of view, from a flavor point of view, I think this is where a lot of people are not happy. And guard players, I think the guard community, we're quite flavor driven, we're quite fluff driven. A lot of people get into their armies with a specific vision. Like raise your hand, but in the comment section if you're someone that you didn't get into guard because you just wanted like generic guard. You got into guard because you were like, I read a book about Cadians and now I need those Cadians. I read a book about Krieg and now I need those Kriegers. I want to get into guard because I want to have a full tank regiment. Guard players have a specific vision, and the problem with a lot of these changes overall, be they change to points, or be they change to core rules, or be they just all of these changes across all of these balanced data slates, Munitron field manuals, Piranex, everything, it feels like we're being sent down a specific path, but that not every guard player is being catered to. It really feels like we need a codex. I'm not saying we need a codex because we need to get more powerful. We need a codex because right now this index is not catering to the majority of guard players. It's catering to a specific guard playstyle. And hey, for people like myself who have got deep guard collections, who can pivot to a new playstyle, who will chase the meta, I'm a tournament whacker piece of shit, guys. I like this because it makes my army feel more powerful and it allows me to build into a new and exciting way of playing the guard. But there's going to be a lot of players that see this from a fluff perspective, from an immersion perspective, and they're not going to be happy. Now that is the points changes covered and also the balanced data slate covered, but we're not done yet because there's been a few key things changed in the rules commentary as well. The dreaded rules commentary. This thing doesn't comment on the rules. This thing is the new version of 10th edition. This is now 10.5 edition. It's not a rules commentary. But before I go on a massive rant about how much I hate the rules commentary, let's stay on focus, stay on target, and look at what has changed. First up, Games Workshop has added pivots into the game officially. This means that no longer do you have to take loads of inches off your movement as you are navigating your vehicles around the L-shaped ruins of competitive boards. Now, if you have to do a pivot, you just take 2 inches off your movement. And that's not each time you pivot. Whether you do one or more pivots, you take 2 inches off. So you can move a vehicle forward, pivot it to go around the corner, move it, and then just pivot it again, and all of that will cost you just 2 inches of movement. Not every vehicle will have to take that 2-inch penalty though. Models have a pivot value of 0 unless otherwise stated. That means infantry can just move around how they want. And monster and vehicle models, excluding models on round bases and aircraft, have a pivot value of 2 inches. So if you've got things like a Riptide, that can move around as much as it wants and doesn't have to pay the pivot tax of 2 inches. But if you've got like a Lehman Russ or a Rhino, because you don't have a round base, it does mean that you will have to pay the 2-inch tax. But overall, I think this is a good change, and I think this is going to add a lot of maneuverability to guard vehicles. You're going to be able to move up through a ruin, go round the corner, take the pivot, and then at the end of your move, pivot again, and you'll probably be able to end up sticking your bow around the corner and get lots more line of sight. This is going to open up line of sight to our vehicles. And guys, our vehicles just got buffed in multiple different ways from points changes and born soldiers. So this pivot is actually a buff to our guard vehicle movement. On top of this, a small change is you can no longer use firing deck if you've already shot this turn. Long story short, this was made to fix Space Marines and their eliminators getting to impulsors. For the guard, it means that you can't have a unit of snipers, a unit of ratlings, shoot and then scarper into a chimera and then shoot again. I don't think anyone was actually doing this. It was kind of a funny meme thing that you could do, but it has been changed. But the really big one, and we kind of have covered this already in the points changes bit, so I'll just touch on it lightly here, is the change to indirect fire. You still get the -1 to hit penalty if you can't see the target. The target still gets the benefit of cover, but now an unmodified hit roll of a 1 to 3 always fails. This is true for the guard, and it's true for all other factions as well. For guard, this means that no more hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, thanks to having heavy, take aim, and daring recon from a sentinel. In fact, there's not much point in putting orders on your basilisk anymore, because they hit on a 4+ natively and they get +1 from heavy and they get -1 for shooting indirect. There is a point on putting orders on your infantry artillery though, because most of the foot-based artillery like the FOBs and the mortars, they hit on a 5 base. So you're still going to want to put take aim on them, or you're going to want to put sentinels out there as well, because sentinels give you daring recon. Now, speaking of daring recon, there is an argument going around at the moment that it completely counters this change, because daring recon says you no longer suffer the penalty for indirect fire, and that the word penalty isn't defined. I don't know all about that, but it's pretty clear to me that the intention for this rule is an unmodified hit roll of 1 to 3 always fails. If you are a guard player right now and you're not sure which way to play this interpretation, I would always say play it against you. Play it not in your favor. Because if it turns out that, TOs come around and say, actually it does work, or that GW comes out and says, yeah, daring recon overrides this, then great, little Brucey bonus. But you don't want to be using the rule incorrectly in a way that favors you, because that could lead to a bit of feel badsies. It's always good to play things against you, and then if it ends up being for you, it's a nice bonus. And last, but certainly not least, there's one other change that I want to talk about, and this is covered in the Pariah Nexus Tournament Companion. There is a secondary mission that will be coming out as part of the Pariah Nexus update called Cull the Horde. And how this objective works is if you destroy a unit with a starting strength of 20 or more, you get 5 VP. Now, when this secondary was leaked, there were a lot of people trying to find ways around beating it. There were orc and Tyranid players who were like, well, what if I just take 19 boys or 19 Tyranids in a unit? I can do that. My unit strength is 10 to 20. GW has fixed this now. They say when a unit's player added that unit to their army, the points value they subtracted from the total permitted for this battle was sufficient for that unit to be composed of 20 models or more. That's a very, very wordy way of saying, even if you take 19, because you could have taken 20, you're still eligible for Cull the Horde. Now, for a brief moment here, I was very excited about infantry squads. In fact, I even recorded a video about infantry squads, saying that infantry squads still break the game, because infantry squads technically have a starting strength of 18 models, because you have 2 sergeants, 14 guardsmen, and 2 heavy weapon teams, which is a total of 18 models in a infantry squad. But if you go over to the Munitorm Field Manual and look at the points cost for the infantry squad, they've now changed it. So it no longer reads 10 models and 20 models or anything like that. It says 9 to 10 models and 18 to 20 models. So what that means is, because you could have taken 20 models in this unit, you could have taken the option with the infantry squads where you don't put the heavy weapon teams in, you're still eligible for Cull the Horde. So it's a little bit complicated, a little bit all over the place. Boiling it right down, there's no way of getting around Cull the Horde now. Infantry squads, even heavy weapon teams, are eligible to be culled. So let's bring all of this together, because we've touched upon a lot of different things in this video. It's been a bit of a long one. If I could sum up what all of these changes mean to Guard in one word, it would be this. Pivot! Pivot! We got to pivot, boys. I think that Artillery Guard, as in pure spam Artillery Guard, it's dead on arrival now. But there's a definite benefit to going down Mech Guard. A lot of our vehicles that were good have stayed cheap, like Chimeras are really solid now. A lot of our battle line that can go inside those Chimeras didn't change in terms of points. There's some really exciting things with Kazakh getting a bit cheaper again, and Scions remaining 50 points. I mean, 5 Scions in the back of a Chimera is 120 points. You can put a plasma gun and a melter gun or a plasma gun and a volley gun in there, and you generate a lot of lethal hits against enemy vehicles. We've then got all of our tanks. All the Lima Russes are cheaper from last time, and now Rogul Dawn's getting cheaper as well. Yeah. Tanks, Chimeras, infantry, all mech'd up, all rolling forward. What I cannot crush with words, I will crush with the tanks of the Imperial Guard. But all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Are you happy with these changes? Are you sad about these changes? Are you looking forward to the pivot? Or are you frustrated that you had to change your army? All of these points of view and all of these perspectives are valid. And I just want to say, there's likely to be some strong feelings and emotions right now. If you see someone that is happy with the changes, but you're not, feel free to disagree. I always encourage active discussion down in the comment section, but do so respectively. Respectably. If you're someone who is unhappy with these changes, and you see someone who has commented that is happy with the changes, feel free to reply to them, of course. I always encourage active discussion down in the comment section, but do so respectfully. Understand that these changes might have been really good for their army. Their perspective might be different from yours. And likewise, if you're someone who's really happy with these changes and you see someone who's maybe feeling a little bit down, you can tell they're a bit emotional, a bit sad about the changes, they might be really pissed off. Don't tell them that they're wrong. Don't present them with all these like logical arguments. Oh no, you're wrong, we don't know how it understands. No, because their army very well may have been hit hard. And even if it's not their specific army, their vision that they might have had for their army might have been heavily impacted by this. Let's discuss it, but let's do so and understand that there's another person on the side of the keyboard and that we do so respectfully and politely. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button, and as always, subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.